Hello and welcome to another episode of The Living Philosophy. Today we are in a philosophical mecca. This is Plato's Academy, or this is what's left of Plato's Academy. It's not much to look at. Unlike the Acropolis or the Agora or even the Lyceum, it's just a bit of a non-entity. It's bizarre. There's a little park around it. There's a playground across the road. There's a street kind of dividing the site up, and yeah, there's like kids setting off fireworks, and it's just such a contrast with what I guess you'd expect. There's no pomp. There's no ceremony. It's not like the impressive epicness of the Acropolis or the Agora. It's very much just a few rocks in a park, it's sad and it's bizarre. Alfred North Whitehead once wrote that all of Western philosophy is a series of footnotes to Plato. Looking around here, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't think that this was the place that all academics derived their title from, the eponymous source of all places with the name Academy. And I guess there's a few reasons why that might be. We're 3.5 kilometres or 2 miles away from the Acropolis, so the Academy was always on the outside of Athens, and now it's just nestled in a random neighbourhood. But could be that, or could be the meagre ruins. But as we'll see in another episode, the Lyceum is also, the ruins aren't particularly impressive, but it's this preened, nice garden kind of thing, and there's a lot of people that go there and visit. Whereas here, we're just in the middle of fucking nowhere. It's crazy. This little bit here behind me is the only part that actually dates from Plato's time. It's a little square peristyle like what you'd find in the Agora, and it dates from around the 4th century BCE, and so Plato founded the Academy in 388, 387 BC. So this is actually the only part we have that dates from that time. There was also a gymnasium, the ruins of which we can see over here, where people came to train and wrestle. Some say that the philosophers liked gyms because they provided plenty of potential students. But it also seems that the rather wealthy Plato owned a good bit of land around here, which makes for quite a convenient place to have a school. So this is the only area we're actually sure that Plato was based in, and it's just hard to imagine. You go back 2,300 years ago, and maybe we would have seen a scene here just like Raphael's School of Athens. You could have seen Plato and Aristotle walking through here talking about some high intellectual matter, and maybe over there we could have seen Plato transmuting that conversation into one of his great dialogues. And it all happened here in this unassuming park in a random neighbourhood in Athens. You can also think of the legendary story of Diogenes, who, after hearing Plato's definition of man as a featherless biped, plucked a chicken, fired it over one of these walls and yelled out, "There's your man for you, Plato." So aside from Plato's Academy and the gymnasium, there was actually a lot of history associated with this place before. So this entire area used to be a grove of olive trees that were sacred to the goddess Athena. And over here behind me, behind this fenced off area, which again, you can't even go in there. It's just, this place is just so underdramatic. But they've excavated two different sites there. And one of them is this holy house that dates from the geometric period. So it's around 1000 to 700 BC, I think. You also have this site called the House of Hekademus. And Hekademus is the ancient Greek hero, ancient Athenian hero after which all this is named. So it's the Grove of Hekademus, and that site goes back to the early Bronze Age, so we're talking 2700 to 2000 BC, and the story of Hekademus is the story of where the Academy comes from and that the name Academia come from. The story goes back to the heroic age of Greece, which, historically speaking, occurred during the Bronze Age. And at the time of our story, the king of Athens was a man called Theseus, who you'll probably know as the hero who slew the half-man, half-bull Minotaur in the labyrinth in Crete thanks to a little help from Ariadne's thread. Now Theseus and his pal Pirithous made a pact to marry some daughters of Zeus. Theseus chose the 12-year-old Helen, the same Helen with the face that launched 1,000 ships, the Trojan War, and the end of the heroic age of the Greeks. So himself and Pirithous kidnapped Helen, and then they set off to kidnap Pirithous' choice of woman, the rather more challenging to kidnap Persephone, the wife of Hades and queen of the underworld. That whole plan, like many such plans, went awry, and Theseus spent 4 years trapped down in Hades before being rescued by Hercules. Meanwhile, above ground, Helen's family weren't too happy. Her twin brothers, the Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, who you probably know as the constellation Gemini in the night sky, weren't too pleased about their sister being kidnapped, and so they invaded Attica and came here to Athens and were going to attack the city, when they met a man in this spot by the name of Hekademus or Academus. And this Academus saved the city by telling the brothers where Helen was being held. Her father, the Spartan king Tyndareus, was extremely grateful to Academus, and so, as the great Roman man of letters Plutarch put it in his Life of Theseus, for this reason he was honoured during his life by the Tyndaridae, and often afterwards when the Lacedaemonians, the Spartans, invaded Attica and laid waste all country round about, they spared the academy for the sake of Academus. And so the sacred olive grove survived the Peloponnesian War intact, but it didn't fare so well against the Romans. In 86 BC, the Roman general Sulla, who later became the dictator that set the precedent for Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire, decimated the sacred grove in order to make siege engines with which to besiege Athens. And while he was at it, he levelled the academy, and 3 years later its head died, and with him, the Platonic Academy of Athens came to an end. And that was the end of the original academy, from its founding by Plato in 387 BC to its sacking by Sulla in around 86 BC. And it's bizarre to be here with the fireworks going off and the teenagers with the loud music kind of playing around in the ancient ruins. There's something, it brings to mind an episode we did in the first 100 days of the channel about Patrick Kavanagh and Bell X1 and this Irish type of sacredness, which is where the sacred and the profane are like very close together and married. And there's something to that here in the academy. You've got this ancient site where Plato and Aristotle were for decades, and it's the birth of the European intellectual tradition, and that has done so much to transform the world, and yet it's just so mundane, it's so everyday, and something particularly beautiful when you think about Plato's philosophy and you combine that, and Plato being this philosopher of the transcendental, the eternal ideas, and yet this is the academy, it's gone, and Plato is gone, and yet the ideas have lived on and have transformed the world, and the ideas are what has been perennial and eternal. And I think Plato could live with that. I think that's something quite beautiful. And I think in some way that's nicer than this being the Vatican or the Acropolis. It's just something in the mundanity of the profanity that really brings home that old message about this too shall pass, and how things are always changing. And so it's that tension between the Heraclitus' thing of like you can't step into the same river twice, everything is constantly changing, and Parmenides' emphasis on being and how nothing is ever changing, and how there's something that always remains the same, and that parallel life between the mundanity and the eternality here is something that's really beautiful. So yeah, that's everything that I wanted to share on this episode of The Living Philosophy. I'd like to thank Shane and Croissant Eater and all the other patrons for supporting the channel, for making all this possible. And yeah, if you want to support the channel, you can head over to Patreon, where you can get access to early episodes, some episodes that won't be on the channel. I'll be doing monthly Q&As, and yeah, you can get your name in the credits like these wonderful people. And yeah, if you have any thoughts, insights or feedback, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Otherwise, I shall see you next time. Thank you for watching.